We pulled the transmission pan off all three of them at 200,000 miles. What came out of two of the pans was expected dark fluid with some metallic debris, evidence of 200,000 miles of heat cycles and shift events. What came out of the third pan stopped the work in the shop. The fluid looked like it had been in the transmission for somewhere around 50,000 miles, not 200,000. The transmission code is A750F. It appears in the 4th and 5th generation 4Runner, the Tacoma from 2005 onward, and the FJ Cruiser. At 200,000 miles of real-world use, the inside of that transmission looked like nothing had happened. That result tells you more about what determines whether an automatic transmission reaches high mileage in working condition than any engineering specification Toyota has published. The three units we compared are the A750F, the U660E, and the AB60F. The U660E is a 6-speed automatic transaxle used in the Camry, the RAV4, and the Highlander. Toyota built more of these than almost any other automatic in its lineup, so if you have owned a front-wheel drive Toyota sedan or crossover in the last 15 years, there is a reasonable chance the U660E is sitting in your driveway right now. The AB60F is a 6-speed automatic used in the Tundra and some Land Cruiser variants, designed for higher torque loads than either of the other two transmissions in this test. To evaluate all three at the same mileage threshold, we use the same 4-point inspection method on each unit. First, fluid color and smell on drain. Second, debris volume and particle size on the drain plug magnet. Third, visual inspection of the transmission pan for accumulated sludge and clutch material. Fourth, laboratory fluid analysis measuring iron and copper content in parts per million, oxidation level, friction modifier concentration, and viscosity shift from the baseline specification. All three units were tested blind by the lab before we disclosed the maintenance history of each vehicle. The A750F won by a margin that surprised the shop. The fluid was darker than new, but had not broken down into the sludge condition we found in the other pans. The drain plug magnet collected less ferrous material than either of the other two units. The clutch material content in the laboratory analysis came back lower than both the U660E and the AB60F. At 200,000 miles, the A750F's wear indicators were consistent with what most transmission specialists would expect to find at around 100,000 miles of use. The reason it won is not the one most people will guess when they first see the result. The stakes here are not abstract numbers. A transmission rebuild on an A750F runs from $2,500 to $4,000 depending on what failed and which shop does the work. A U660E rebuild runs from $2,000 to $3,500. An AB60F rebuild on a Tundra or Land Cruiser, which requires a shop with tooling and experience on the rear-wheel drive Toyota platform, runs from $3,000 to $5,000 before taxes and fees. Those prices assume you find a competent shop that has rebuilt these transmissions before. Many owners end up sourcing a used replacement transmission rather than rebuilding the original, which introduces the direct risk of buying a unit with an identical maintenance history to the one that just failed. A transmission fluid service on any of these three units costs between $80 and $150 at an independent shop. A drain and fill, not a flush. Done consistently at 60,000-mile intervals, that maintenance cost over a 200,000-mile service life totals roughly $500 to $600 in labor and fluid. That number is the entire cost of keeping a transmission alive from new to 200,000 miles. Compare that to the rebuild quote. The math does not require explanation. What makes it complicated for most owners is that the transmission gives almost no warning between working normally and not working. There is no gradual degradation that registers clearly in the driving experience until the internal damage is already advanced. The fluid is the only inspection window an owner has available without dropping the pan, and most owners never look at it. The one factor that makes this calculation more visible right now is that Toyota ATF WS, the fluid specified for all three of these transmissions, has become meaningfully more expensive over the past year. The disruption in synthetic lubricant supply chains beginning in early 2026 pushed prices at dealerships and online retailers up 15 to 30% compared to 18 months ago. That price increase does not change whether a fluid service is worth performing. It just makes the decision feel more expensive than it used to, which is worth naming directly because some owners have been deferring maintenance based on current fluid prices, rather than on any analysis of what that deferral costs downstream. Here's the part of the result that reframes the entire comparison. The 3 transmissions we tested did not come from 3 vehicles with identical ownership histories. The A750F came from a 4Runner with documented fluid changes every 60,000 miles using Toyota ATF WS, performed by the same independent shop that maintained the vehicle from roughly 40,000 miles onward. The U660E came from a Camry whose owner was told at the original dealership purchase that the transmission fluid was a lifetime fill and never needed to be changed. The AB60F came from a Tundra where the fluid had been changed once at around 90,000 miles, and not again before the 200,000-mile inspection. The A750F is probably a more robust design than the U660E. It is a 5-speed unit with fewer clutch packs, fewer solenoids to fail, and no transaxle differential, sharing its housing with the transmission components. A simpler design with fewer failure points and lower internal complexity has real advantages for a longer service life. But the margin of its condition advantage over the other 2 transmissions was not explained by engineering design alone. The A750F won primarily because it was the only one of the 3 that received the maintenance the fluid chemistry required. The other 2 did not arrive in worse condition because Toyota built them poorly. They arrived in worse condition because the fluid inside them was treated as a permanent sealed component when it is not. When the U660E fluid came back from the laboratory, the oxidation level was 4 times higher than the A750F sample taken the same day. The friction modifier concentration, the additive chemistry that allows clutch packs to engage smoothly without shudder or chatter, had depleted to a level the lab flagged as critically low for continued operation without risk of clutch material damage. The U660E was still functional at 200,000 miles. The vehicle drove in and drove out, but the clutch engagement data we logged using a scan tool showed shudder events during light throttle upshifts at low vehicle speed, the early signature of clutch material beginning to separate from the friction plate substrate beneath it. The U660E's internal condition was consistent with a transmission that will need a rebuild in the next 30 to 50,000 miles without intervention. The chemistry of what happens inside an automatic transmission at extended drain intervals explains why the gap between the A750F and the U660E was this severe at the same odometer reading. Toyota ATF WS is a low-viscosity, friction-modified automatic transmission fluid developed specifically for Toyota's transmission valve body and clutch pack designs. The friction modifier additives that make it work are not stable indefinitely under heat. Every heat cycle, every trip where the transmission warms up under load and cools at rest, degrades a fraction of the friction modifier package. The degradation rate accelerates above a temperature threshold that is regularly exceeded during normal highway driving in all 3 of these transmission types. By 50,000 miles in a vehicle with no fluid change, the friction modifier concentration in ATF WS has dropped measurably from the original factory specification. The clutch packs are already engaging on chemistry that is weaker than what Toyota designed around. By 100,000 miles with no fluid change, the oxidation byproducts accumulating in the fluid begin attacking the rubber seal materials used throughout the valve body. The valve body is the hydraulic control center of the transmission. It routes pressurized fluid to each clutch pack through a network of precisely machined passages and solenoid-controlled valves. When the rubber seals in those passages degrade from acid oxidation byproducts, hydraulic pressure leaks internally between circuits. Reduced clutch apply pressure means the clutch packs engage with less clamping force than they were designed to use. Insufficient clamping force causes the clutch material to slip fractionally during each shift event. Slipping generates heat. Heat accelerates friction modifier depletion and seal degradation simultaneously. The failure mode compounds itself, and it is invisible from the driver's seat until the shudder and shift hesitation become severe enough to be undeniable through the steering wheel. The fluid we drained from the U660E was black. Not dark brown, black with a burned odor characteristic of fluid that has been cycled past its oxidation stability limit many times over an extended service life with no refresh. The copper content in the laboratory analysis was elevated, indicating measurable friction material wear from the clutch pack substrates over the vehicle's last service interval. The transmission was not destroyed at 200,000 miles, but the wear evidence in the fluid put its remaining useful service life well short of what the A750F, with the identical odometer reading, still has ahead of it. If you own an A750F in a Tacoma, 4Runner, or FJ Cruiser, change the fluid using Toyota ATF WS every 60,000 miles. Do not use a transmission flush machine, which forces new fluid through the valve body under pressure and can move oxidation sludge into passages it was previously settled away from. Use a drain and fill, repeated 2 to 3 times with a few hundred miles between services, to gradually exchange the old fluid without sending its degradation products further into the hydraulic circuit. The A750F is among the most durable automatics Toyota has built, but the condition it arrived in at 200,000 miles was the direct result of a maintenance schedule that respected the fluid's actual service life, not any assumption that the transmission would survive indefinitely on chemistry it had already consumed. If you own a U660E and a Camry, RAV4, or Highlander, and you were told at any point that the transmission fluid is a lifetime fill requiring no service, treat that information as incorrect and schedule a drain and fill regardless of your current mileage. If you can verify the mileage at which the last fluid change was performed, start a 60,000-mile interval from that point forward. If no verified service history exists for the transmission, start the interval from today and do not let the fluid go longer than 60,000 miles from that point. If you experience a shudder during smooth acceleration in a U660E, particularly during light throttle upshifts at low vehicle speed, the friction modifier concentration has almost certainly depleted below the threshold needed for clean clutch engagement. A drain and fill with fresh ATF WS can slow the progression of clutch material wear, if the damage has not advanced past the early stage. It will not reverse wear that has already occurred, but reducing the friction modifier deficit stops the heat accumulation cycle from continuing to compound the damage. If you own an AB60F in a Tundra or Land Cruiser, the higher torque loads this unit handles under towing and off-road use accelerate thermal stress on the fluid, compared with the other 2 transmissions in this test. A 50,000-mile drain and fill interval is the appropriate target for any AB60F used for towing, off-road driving, or frequent highway operation in hot climates. Toyota automatic transmission fluid ATF is the correct specification. Do not substitute a universal automatic transmission fluid based on claimed compatibility with Toyota's WS specification. The friction modifier chemistry in Toyota automatic transmission fluid WS is specific to Toyota's clutch pack materials, and off-spec substitutes produce measurably different clutch engagement behavior over time. 200,000 miles of evidence in 3 transmission pans does not settle which Toyota automatic transmission is the strongest engineering design. What it does settle is simpler and more useful than that question. The transmission in the best internal condition at 200,000 miles was not the most recent design. It was the one whose fluid was changed, twice, at 60,000-mile intervals. The total cost of those 2 services over the vehicle's life was a fraction of a single line on a transmission rebuild quote. The result in the pan was not close, and the maintenance history that produced it was not complicated.